Good. What are you trying to do?
I'm trying to write my bio. I'm trying to talk about this. I'm trying to talk about my story and about why I started brew making and why I kept doing it. And
What's hard?
What's hard is that my journey into brew making is deeply personal, and I don't know how much of it to share because I feel like it might be a little bit too much for some people. But I'm not afraid to share my story. I want to share my story. I think it's important to speak openly about
how much of the story really is in those other profiles? Do they really try to give you the whole outline of why they made?
No.
What do they try to do?
I mean,
they just want to say like it's like a second bio, like why?
They talk briefly like.
What got you into it?
Let's see. Oh shoot, my eyes are itchy. So I think, I don't know. It's hard to tell. Like, I don't know what the maker wrote of her bio here or what the crafter's box wrote. I feel like this is like an introduction to the bio that maybe the crafter's box wrote.
Is the crafter's box going to write something for you?
I don't know. Okay. It says, so hers says, she's sought after for her custom aesthetic designs, from marbling to painted accents, and what began as a meditative hobby to help manage anxiety and stress turned into a whole new world of art and creativity.
Forget about this.
Okay. But I feel like that's what, like, the crafter's box people, like, gleaned some information from a bio that she wrote, and then wrote that intro, and then this is maybe the... I don't know. I honestly don't know.
It's okay. Hey, how about this? This is part here. She was born somewhere.
Yeah,
she lived somewhere.
So,
it's fine.
It's just so...
You can say you're a mother, you were a motorcyclist, you love things. You could say I'm, who you are if you want.
Mm-hmm.
And then you could go into a quick version of the story if you want to. Like, turns out having children is hard.
And they mentioned that, during the podcast episode, I'll have plenty of opportunity to, like, speak more deeply about my story and stuff.
Well,
and
maybe you'll generate some copy from your podcast.
Yeah, but I have to do this first. The podcast happens like later this month.
Well, they probably won't print this until after the podcast, right? Or it'll be after.
Oh, I don't know. Actually, maybe. Yeah, that's a good point. But maybe.
So you could give them something.
Give them just like the.
Give them a draft or whatever you think, a bio-ish thing, and then when you do a podcast, maybe you can revisit it. Like, you know what? I think I'd like to tweak some things I've said based on what came out in the podcast.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So you don't have to. If it's not like your favorite.
Yeah.
So tell me again, why? How did this thing? What was going through your? Like, walk me back through
my life.
No, just like where you were.
Life.
Where you were that when you got that broom.
When I got the broom from Mom.
You got this broom as a gift for your birthday. Christmas.
Which is basically the same as my birthday.
And at that time, Simon was 1 year old. He just turned 1.
No, he was. Oh shoot! You know what? I don't know how old he was now.
He was young. He was 1 or 2.
I think he was.
He just turned.
I think he was 1.
He just turned 1.
Gosh.
It was either 1 or 2, but Simon.
I don't know.
Was very difficult.
Simon was.
And it was a very difficult time.
It really was.
There was a lot of stress every day.
Yeah.
And what were we doing? I was working.
You were working and I was staying home, and I...
Oh, you were a stay-at-home mom.
I had to adjust to being a stay-at-home mom.
Because you left your job.
Because I left my job.
Because you couldn't do it. It was not really feasible.
I couldn't do both, and we couldn't afford childcare, and he couldn't have gone to childcare anyway, really. He needed us to be home for him.
He needed us to be home. It was a very stressful time. Every day was stressful, and you went to the doctor.
Yeah.
That was much later? Was that about that time?
I think he was maybe 2 by then.
Yeah.
It was March, so he was maybe 1.5.
Okay. But around the same time. Because you got the broom, then you went to the doctor, got diagnosed, you got some medicine, helped a little bit, and then you were still feeling very stuck, and you're still feeling not very comfortable in this life.
Yeah. Well, it was just so hard for me to feel like my life was meaningful, but be
You're
beyond
a milk machine.
Yeah. Well, by that point I wasn't anymore, but by the time I started learning to make brooms, I was pregnant with Connor, but I had a miscarriage in between, and that was super traumatic for me. And I did a lot of shadow work around that time about owning my life events and accepting them and not being afraid of them anymore. Because I realized that if I kept my miscarriage and other past traumas in my shadow, I would just be running from them all the time. I wouldn't ever want to talk about them. I wouldn't ever want to face them. I wouldn't want to accept or own them or claim them as part of my story. And I don't know. I think that process, although I was already on my sort of spiritual journey at that time, that process of doing that shadow work really helped me to own other aspects of myself as well.
You started experimenting with witchcraft?
Yeah, but that was before.
I know.
But
yeah, you're exploring.
Yeah, I was exploring and I was kind of testing some waters and but the thing is I had always felt drawn to that path. I always knew that I wanted that path. It was just a matter of owning it and not being afraid of the repercussions or consequences anymore.
Yeah, and you felt like you had to find yourself because you were in this ball of stress.
Yeah.
And you were screaming I need something. And what you needed was you.
Yeah. Well, I went from
that became.
I went from having this career where I could use my art to communicate with thousands of people and put myself out in the world like I had a bit of a purpose,
Right.
And then
exactly.
when I'm home all the time, I felt like our house was just this kind of
you were in a cage.
Kind of, but I remember thinking one time that this is just a tiny plot of land on the earth.
Mm-hmm.
What does it matter what happens here? And all the cleaning and organizing and stuff that I do in the house, it felt completely meaningless because it wasn't affecting anybody other than us.
Yeah.
And
it felt very small.
It felt very small. Very small. And making brooms helped me to find meaning in that process, and it helped me to see how important homekeeping is and how important it is to keep a space and tend a space and reclaim a space that's yours. Because, I don't know, energy just you don't want other people to be able to fuck with your own energy. You know what I mean?
You want to own it. This is make a mark, get in touch with your energy. I don't know how else to say it.
Yeah, exactly. And
Like
it's
you
like you need a place
have
in the
control.
world where you
Take
can
control.
feel grounded and centered and safe. And sweeping with a handmade broom, for me, it was just so much different than sweeping with a.
It felt authentic.
It felt so much more real. It felt, their natural materials, natural wood, natural broom corn, and it just felt like
touch. Alive.
So much more.
It's not separated, not detached from what's
right. And it, like, I felt so much more connected to the world, and I felt so much more grounded, and sweeping became more meditative than tedious. And it just
and that made you realize you can really take enjoyment of the parts of your life that you kind of resented.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. It helped me to fall back in love with my space, my space in the world, and it helped me to fall back in love with my role within that space.
Well, that sounds nice.
Yeah.
Okay. I think that's good stuff.
That's good stuff.
That's probably all you need. But I tell you, it's a beautiful journey. I love all kinds of parts about it.
Yeah.
I love the test or the pressure, and you rise above, and
Right.
you like
Kind of break
perseverance,
yeah.
and these beautiful things about humanity or life and struggle and breaking through and triumph, and there's these great ideals. Or
You know what? I just thought of like the corniest, but like super applicable metaphor. Like my time at home, being a stay-at-home mom, and spending so much time in the house, and just like horrible postpartum depression and a miscarriage and just so much shit, all being stuck in this tiny little house and all this pressure put on me and stuff. And then I broke through it, like you said, and I became a beautiful butterfly. That's what I was thinking. It's like this house is kind of like our cocoon, and
but there was real
there was
real pain.
Oh, absolutely.
There was real pain.
Trauma.
And
oh God.
We were crying.
Yeah.
And thinking back about it, it hurts to think about it, but it's beautiful to think about because that's real story. That's real life, and you live your life, and you live outside of your life so much. You're not really in touch with your life. You're like watching TV, or you're working and you're doing something else besides your life. But you get these parts of your story that come out sometimes, and when you reflect back on them, you really notice them. Like that was life story stuff. That was me. I'm defined by these moments, even though they're painful.
Absolutely, yeah. And the thing is because those hard times, because that trauma kind of defines you, that's why I felt like it was so important to own it.
Yeah.
Because if you have this thing that defines you and then you don't own it, you just end up living this half-life. And then you live your life like in fear.
And you get these blinders on, like that's not me. I didn't do that.
Right.
Yeah, but if you can have your wounds and your scars and bear them and love them,
yeah,
it becomes this wholesome, this whole embrace of, I don't know,
this whole human.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to express that. I mean, there are all these like inspirational quotes and things online all the time saying like you are whole and you are worthy, but they don't ever go into like what that means. Like you can't remove your trauma from your life. Because if you are, it what's left is this incomplete version of you. And I think that in order to be whole, you have to kind of own your life and accept it. And I mean, healing from it is kind of another story. That's a different journey altogether. But they kind of go hand in hand. They run parallel to each other. And
yeah. It's the emo kid in me that loves that stuff.
Yeah, I know. Well, that's why it's been so difficult for me to make myself sit down and talk about this stuff, because I feel like I have to like really, really dig deep in order to pick and choose the pieces of the story to like whittle it down. And I don't like whittling it down. I don't like presenting a watered down version of my life. It's just not, I don't know, I don't like it. And
but making a business, creating this, more than just the brooms, it's creating this direction, organization, details that you're, these all these problems you get to you're solving, managing all of these variables and life and work and customers and emails and Instagram, and but succeeding, but doing it,
right.
and having all that accomplishment, that and meaningful accomplishment.
Yeah. Well, and I
That's-
don't really think any of it would
that's a
have been
path.
possible if I hadn't like learned years earlier in my life how to trust my instinct.
Right.
And
Right.
how to just trust myself and recognize when the universe is telling me to do something,
Right.
you know? And if you get that message and you listen to it and you trust it, it's like, it's just...
You see an open door and you have the courage to walk through it.
Yeah. And it's this massive piece to this puzzle of life. It's like your intuition and your shadow self and your I guess goals is the wrong word, but like what you want to manifest for your life. You can't really do that without these other two things. Does that make sense? I don't know if that makes sense.
Well, I think we have enough.
Okay.
Let's upload this and
Get Google to transcribe it.
get some inspiration from it.
I'm not going
Bye.
to type all that out.